So let's paint the scene. You're following someone in your car and they just speed off. They catch the light, you don't. They make a turn without putting their signal on. You go right past because you didn't know that you were supposed to turn there. And you're stuck like, oh, you forgot about me. That's how a lot of relationships feel. You're technically included, but you're not being considered. Let's talk about it. Guys, welcome to the Bear Brain Podcast, where the goal is to rise above it all, stay elevated, create that infinity, and up your you. I'm your host, Isaiah. It is April. Still Aries season. Yes. Started the month off, well, with my birthday. And it's been such a grounding time for me to just reflect, to just, put my foot on the gas a little bit and also just kind of like cruise too. So it's really a journey to say the least. And in my head, I'm thinking about like a long winding road, but something where it's just like, you have to accelerate to get around the road, but you don't got to speed through it. You don't got to drive crazy. You just get to enjoy the ride. And that's so funny that I'm literally talking about that as a metaphor. And today's episode is very much about, you know, this idea of the passenger, being a passenger in other people's lives. Who do you feel safe with driving you around? And it goes a little bit deeper, obviously. In the beginning of the episode, I said, you ever been following some, this happened to me multiple times. You ever supposed to be following somebody somewhere and they speed off? Like they don't drive like there's somebody behind them that is relying on them to get to where they got to go. They just do what they do and it is what it is. Hopefully you catch up, or it's the whole, well, you got GPS, right? And I've thought about that. It's kind of that same framework of like, you ever get dropped off home, or something that I grew up on was like this concept of, whenever I got dropped off at home or whenever I dropped somebody off when I was old enough to drive, it was always, I would wait until they not only got into their house, but they turned the lights on and they closed their door and they locked it, and then I would speed off. Didn't matter if it was a woman, didn't matter if it was a man. It was just somebody that was important to me, so I would wait. I learned that, growing up from my mom, she was like, you just wait till somebody gets in the house. Because I used to watch her do it. And naturally, I do it. It's like you wait till the person gets in the house before you speed off, because you never know, hey, did they forget something? Are they okay? Are they locked out? Whatever the case may be, something can happen. And it's not about being in a state of constant panic and fear, but it's also just understanding the reality of life. We are not guaranteed or promised much of anything. And we walk around with this entitlement that everything is just going to work in our favor. That's cool in some cases, but it's also important to be mindful of other people. And I think that is so relevant to this whole concept of like being a passenger in somebody else's life, or, you're supposed to be tailgating with somebody and how do they treat you? Life being the road, the person, whoever it is, friend, partner, family member, being the driver, and you're the passenger. How somebody drives their life is how they'll handle you in it. How someone drives their life is how they'll handle you in it. And sometimes we don't understand that, right? I think, obviously, as I've gotten older, I'm a very cautious driver in real life, but also a cautious driver in my relationships. I am very much about making sure that when I'm in a car by myself, I'm aware. But when I'm in a car with somebody else, I'm even more aware. It's like, oh, there's another person I'm responsible for. So let me make sure I take care of them, whether that's driving a certain speed, being mindful how they feel in a car. Hey, you got room? What music you want to listen to? You want to rock this podcast? Hey, I was listening to this. You want to check it out? It's constant consideration, right? Thinking about the other person, not just being on autopilot and or cruise control. And I think what I've realized is like, there are some people who, or a lot of people, they move with this idea of everyone is supposed to acclimate to me, right? Self-centered. So everything revolves around me. And that's just how I drive. That's how I operate. When I'm in the car, if you got to follow me, well, make sure you can keep up. It's not, hey, I'm going to make sure I reduce the speed, because you don't know where you're going. I do, right? You don't know your way around this neighborhood, etc. I know where we're going, so let me make sure I get you there properly. And I think in relationships too, there's this idea sometimes where we don't consider other people to make sure that they are on the same wavelength as us when it is necessary, right? There's a difference between codependency, obviously, and interdependence. And I'm not just talking about romantic partnerships. I'm even talking about friends. One thing I realize is, especially in guy friendships, I don't think there's really this practice of just considering your people, considering them outside of it being incentivized, right? We want to roll out the red carpet for a partner. Sexual orientation aside, you roll out the red carpet for a partner, but it's like you kind of backslide or you half-ass when it comes to your friendships. And this happens in romantic partnerships too, don't get me wrong, but it's like this thing of, I will do what I need to do to get past the interview and get the job, but once I get the job, I'm going to slack off. And it becomes very telling, right? How somebody drives, are they reckless or are they cautious of other people on the road? Sometimes I would tell my homies, I was like, hey, look, let me know you got home safe. And the first thing they'll say is like, well, yeah, I'm a good driver, so I'll be fine. I'm like, yeah, sometimes I'm not worried about you per se. It's like, I'm worried about other people on the road too. Just because you're good doesn't mean you are in control of everybody else. And that's a really good framework for me that I've understood is like, how do people drive in life? Some people are very reckless with their own lives. So how would they really be considerate of somebody else's needs and benefits? I don't even treat myself in a proper way, right? So how am I going to have the desire or wherewithal to show up for you the way you need to be shown up for? Okay. A lot of times when we think about what driving actually represents, when we talk about speed, is moving too fast emotionally, not letting the connection develop, being a go with the flow kind of person and not necessarily stopping and, running red lights, and not really yielding when necessary or not taking it a little bit slower, not being more intentional, wanting always an adventure versus accountability and some emotional awareness, the growth, the discomfort stuff. I know traffic for a lot of people is frustrating. It's funny because it's like I've sat on the 405 so many times, and it's just like, man, we got a ways to go. I'm usually chilling. I'm on the phone, listening to music, listening to podcasts. It's very rare that I'm in a rush. The reason why is because I usually give myself enough time for wherever I gotta go. And I understand it can be different when you are in a rush, right? Because it's like, well, I gotta get somewhere, I'm running late. But it's like, did you prepare? Did you know where you had to be way before you had to be there? And now you're expecting everybody else to accommodate your frustration, your urgency, your priority, and your need to get an hour out in 5 minutes. And now you're rushing and pressuring everybody else. And sometimes we do that in relationships, right? Where it's like, we have a need, we desire to be convenienced, and everybody else should just meet that. And when they don't, we're frustrated. when it comes to awareness, let's say you're in the passenger seat of somebody's car, you're in their life, you're developing this relationship, you're developing this friendship. Do they check in? You know, are they anticipatory? Are they curious about you? What feels a little bit reckless to you? What feels a little bit safe? You know, how are they managing the process when it comes to getting to know you? Do they notice when you fall behind? You know what I'm saying? That's a thing too. You know, a lot of times people are only concerned with how they're feeling in a day. You ever talk to somebody and you're like, damn, I had a pretty long day. And they immediately go, oh yeah, me too. I had this going on, and this happened, and then this happened. And never once do they really ask, damn, what made your day so intense, so long? There's so much you can tell about how a person considers other people. You just got to pay attention. And I've noticed this for myself, is like, it's so minor sometimes, you know, but you just watch how a person naturally operates. How considerate are they of other people when it's not incentivized, when they're just doing things and no one's watching? How do they function? Are they very self-centered, or are they aware of other people? And when you catch it, you can't unsee it, because like, oh, I understand now. You know, I understand this is how you move. This is your mode of operation. This is just how you function. You know?
This episode is brought to you by MGM Plus. From and its Horrors returns for season 4, centered around a town that traps all those who enter. Terrifying creatures that come out at night. Horrors some wished had stayed buried. Where desperate hope leads to darker truths. Dangerous new arrivals, a sinister figure, a shocking revelation. From season 4 premieres April 19th on MGM Plus. Some doors should remain closed.
Communication, like if you are following somebody, do they tell you where they're going? Or do they just switch lanes without warning? You know, this is the whole busyness thing. I think so often people try to look very important in relationships with people that are supposed to be important to them. It's like, I want to look important and be more important than actually taking care of the relationship I said is important. And that's when we lose the plot, right? It's like, you're not in connection, you're in competition now. And your ego is driving, right? Your ego is very reckless because it's moving in and out of lanes. It's dismissing certain signs. Like, hey, maybe I could just send a 5-second message. Hey, you know, this is going on. It was like, you know, I'll hit you up when I'm done. Hey, just checking in, seeing how you're doing. Let me know. Hey, let me know what your highlight was. Let me know what your low point was. I do this with my people. It's like, yo, what was the high point of your day? What was the low point? Because it allows us to slow down. Right? Do people adjust for you? Do they slow down their speed? Do they change the temperature in the car for you? Or is it like, well, it's my car, my rules? And it's not like you have to be a demanding person. It's just a simple value like, hey, how does this person consider other people that are along for the ride with them? You know, there's this, I think I also learned this from my mom, is like the idea of bringing your own car. It's like, I'll drive, right? I'll drive, because at the end of the day, if there's somewhere I don't want to be, if there's somewhere I'm not being taken care of, if I want to go home early, I got my own car. I don't have to rely on when somebody else decides that they want to be ready or whatever. And in life too, it's the same thing. I think a lot of times in relationships of any kind, there is this element of feeling like stuck. I have to acquiesce to what a person wants when they want. And that leaves me hanging, you know. But when you bring your own car in life, you know you got wheels to get home, especially if this person's not taking care of you. We're in the middle of nowhere, and you got me out here looking like a fool. All right, cool, I'm out. Versus being stranded, right? In our adult lives, in our adult relationships, you are never stranded. Never put yourself in a position to be stranded with somebody who's reckless with you. I don't care who it is. Right? Sometimes people expect you to keep up no matter what, in a very selfish and self-centered way. It's like, I expect you to keep up, but I'm not communicating what is necessary. I'm not telling you ahead of time, hey, I drive fast or whatever. I'm also not accommodating. Hey, I usually drive fast, but I'm gonna make sure we good. We ain't in a rush. Just want to make sure we get there safely. And that's a relationship too. Practicing safety and a connection. How am I driving with you to make sure that we all good? It does not take much to consider other people, but it does take inconvenience. Right? And then from a safety aspect, do you feel calm or anxious around these people? Think about the people you show up for. Do you feel like you have to brace yourself? Do you feel like you're already minimizing yourself in order to exist in the space that they've created or didn't create for you? What does it look and feel like? You know, some people don't realize they're not driving alone. You know, pay attention. Does it feel like you're always catching up? Does it feel like you're unseen? Right? Are you willing to consider them and accommodate them when it's necessary? Right? Do they give you gas money? You know, and gas money can be a lot of things in different ways. Is the person appreciative of the effort or the distance that you're willing to go for them? Or do you feel like an afterthought? You know, feel like you're present but not prioritized. Again, there's a difference between being included and being considered. Included is simply proximity, and considered is intention. And you really get to think about that. Some people genuinely do lack emotional awareness. Not care, but definitely emotional awareness. Some people know that you're there, they just don't adjust. And just because someone lets you ride with them doesn't mean that they know how to carry you. Again, there is a difference between being included and being considered. There's a difference between, hey, you could come if you want. Hey, I would love to have you here. And you learn that, right? You learn how a person drives in their life. You learn how a person drives with you in it. Now it's time to ask yourself, have I left people behind emotionally? Have I been selfish in my pursuit and process and relationship? Especially if it was healthy and it is something we say we want to cultivate, right? Do I communicate my shifts? Do I expect people to just keep up? Do I expect people to just assume that nothing's wrong, even if I'm not responding to messages that I can easily respond to because I'm on social media all day, right? Do I just expect people to get it and adjust? You can't ask for a safe driver if you're reckless with people too, and that's what people fail to realize. A lot of times we want to be taken care of in ways that we don't even consider taking care of other people. So pay attention to people who check in, right? Pay attention to people who adjust. Pay attention to people who communicate. And they're not risky when they're driving, but they're willing to take risks when it comes to you. You know, it's the energy is, I don't need you to stop your life for me, but if I'm in the car, I need you to know you see me. And that's what we fail to realize in life is like, look, you don't need to do anything differently. But if you feel that you don't have to adjust in a very respectful and considerate way when I'm in the car with you or I'm in your life, hey, I'm out. You could drop me off on a corner. I'll catch an Uber back home. The right people don't just invite you into their life, they drive like you matter. And you're not asking for too much, you're asking to be considered. All right, so think about that. When you're a passenger in somebody else's car, how do they drive? And when somebody's a passenger in your car, are you aware of them? And if you're following somebody, do you feel like they make sure you're keeping pace? Are they checking their rear view to make sure you're still behind? Do they pull over if you get lost? Or if you're tailing, do they pull over and wait for you? Or do they just say, I'll meet you there? And that is so telling. It is so telling how a person considers you outside of their convenience. All right. So, yeah, it's something to think about. Drive your speed, you know, stay in your lane, but pay attention to the people you are willing to be a passenger in their car, and also who you have in your car. How do they take care of it? But don't let somebody drive your car. especially if they're reckless. All right? Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Take flight.